All right, hi everyone. So we're on to a new topic now. We're going to start to discuss population ethics, which is what do we do about the growing human population. So, population ethics is a topic that's going to touch on a couple of issues that are currently extremely controversial. First of all, as we've already seen kind of in the last unit, population ethics touches on reproductive rights and reproductive liberties, which is perennially a topic of a lot of heated discussion. But populations don't just change through births, they also change through immigration. And as we're going to see in the paper that we read today, immigration is a topic that just can't be ignored when you're discussing population ethics. That's something that you have to factor in. So Garrett Hardin is someone that we've already met in this course. We've already read one of his papers, and of course, as you recall, he's concerned about the growing human population because he feels that it's going to lead to a tragedy of the commons on a global scale, where resources are going to be exhausted and we're not going to be able to feed the population. Hardin also views reproduction itself as basically a common pool resource, so it's something that people are going to overuse if it's not regulated, just like they would any other resource. And so that leads him to call for restrictions on reproduction. In the paper that we've already read by Hardin, The Tragedy of the Commons, he makes this proposal that the United States could solve a lot of its economic and social and environmental problems if they would just cut all social welfare programs. The idea being, if the poor can't reproduce, there's going to basically be no more poor people, or there's going to be a lot less of them. There's going to be more resources to go around. The environment's going to be healthier. So you might question the effectiveness of this, of course. That's controversial, but you might also just question whether it's basically an ethical proposal or not. Hardin would say, look, ethics are a function of the context, right? Your ethics have to reflect the reality of the situation. In this paper, Hardin is basically making the same proposal at the international level. So developed countries can prosper, they can do well if they regulate their populations, and they have the means and resources to do this. And basically it's kind of regulating itself. In a lot of wealthy countries, the population is kind of leveling off, and if they close their doors to immigration, they're going to do fine. They have the resources to prosper and do well. But the problem is they can't control what's going on outside of their own borders. And out of all the things that Hardin says in his paper, the one that's uncontroversial, that's definitely a fact, is that the population in the developing world is increasing much faster than it is in the developed, wealthier countries. So what do we do? In these developed countries, we have these other countries where there's a lot of people starving, a lot of hungry people. They're not able to feed their populations. Well, you might think we should send them aid, we should send help. And Hardin thinks this is a bad idea. If you send them help, they're going to be able to, everyone's going to be able to feed their populations and keep them alive, but that means those populations are going to continue to grow. They're growing rapidly. The poor countries are just going to get poorer. Their quality of life is going to continue to drop as more people are added. And because they can survive off foreign aid in the short term, there's just no incentive for them to do anything about the kind of policies that have led to these disastrous situations in the first place. So ultimately, the only thing that's going to lead to the population being regulated worldwide and to population growth being curbed worldwide is just to cut foreign aid and let these places fend for themselves, and they're either going to fix their problems. Basically, they're either going to fix their problems or they're going to die off. So Hardin illustrates this all with an analogy of the lifeboats, right? Which it's a vivid analogy that we discuss in the slides, and it's in the paper itself. And you might question whether or not this is an accurate analogy, or whether this is at all like an ethical proposal that we even want to entertain. But Hardin makes the point that even if we can feed these populations for a while, we may not be able to do that forever. A lot of people have questioned whether Hardin had his basic facts straight. I mean, after all, he was writing like 50 years ago, and so far there hasn't been any kind of like a global catastrophe like he was warning about. As a matter of fact, it seems like things are getting better and not worse as far as quality of life. But as Hardin points out, there's no guarantee that that can be sustained forever, right? We come up with one scientific miracle after another to keep the population alive, and it's questionable whether we can continue that indefinitely. And besides that, Hardin ends the paper kind of on something to think about. He says, suppose that we can keep a very large population alive. What kind of impact is that going to have on the planet that we live in? I mean, is wilderness going to disappear? Is everything going to be like these concentrated urban areas? And can humans survive, without privacy and solitude and nature around them? And what kind of lives are they going to lead? So you may feel that Hardin's ideas are extreme, or you may not like his solutions at all, but most of us would agree that there is an issue here that has to be thought about and has to be addressed. So you guys will have a chance to talk a little bit more about Hardin on Friday with Lisa in sections, and I'll see you next week.